Thank you for listening to the Golden Hour Drip podcast with me, Logan Lee Miller. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another Golden Hour Drip podcast. I'm your host, Logan Lee Miller. Before we get started, if you wouldn't mind, and if you haven't done it already, please subscribe to the show. It literally takes 2 seconds to do. I would appreciate it so much. If you're listening on audio, we also have a YouTube version. So if you want to look at me, and I can imagine looking at you and staring into your soul, go to the YouTube channel, give it a thumbs up, give me a comment, tell me what you like about the episode, all of the things. It means the world to me. And I promise you, it will take you 2 seconds or less. I honestly, this week has been a bit wild. I feel like I've been making time for things that I normally don't make time for. And it all boils down to my systematic schedule of the day. I have really been loving the 4 quarters of my day. Sometimes it's like a little more than 4 quarters, especially if I have something really important and imperative in the morning, and then also in the afternoon or evening time. Or if I'm feeling like zero motivation at all whatsoever, I will do simple tasks of make the bed. 6 to 9, I need to make the bed, make my coffee, sit outside. Sometimes it's the simplest, smallest things to be put on this schedule. But the mindset shift that comes with even the daily routine things that I might not have the energy to do, putting it on my 4 quadrants or 6 quadrants of the day is so impactful. And I had to put some hard boundaries out this past week, which is not always fun. Most of them were with myself. Boundaries as in all right, it would be really fun if we could put all of these activities and do all of these things, but I didn't have enough time, or I knew that I was going to feel overwhelmed if I was trying to fit it all in. So I made my to-do list, and if I didn't get my to-do list done, then I had to set that or keep that boundary with myself and say, you know what, we can't go, or, that would be fun, but we have other goals, other plans. And it was difficult, but it was almost so empowering because I was able to say no, free up my time, and get what needed to be done, finished and completed. Saturday, I had to teach a yoga class. It was so much fun. And then the afternoon was totally free. And normally I take the afternoon and I want to jam pack as many items as possible. I want to catch up with my friends. I want to hang out. I want to do all of the things. And I really needed the afternoon to be creative in the aspect of I was in the kitchen, but nothing to really be productive in an aspect that was with my career or with my goals, but instead just being present and in the moment. And that was so impactful and helpful to have essentially the Saturday afternoon off. But that means the next day need to actually have a to-do list. And since I took Saturday off, I wasn't able to do some things that I had planned for Sunday that I really wanted to go do. But that's all right. We have to make sure we're taking care of our mental and physical to-do list. My mental health is so important. And also if my house or the things that I know are going to make me feel good aren't done, then that weighs in on my mental health and my anxiety and what should I be doing, and running around with a chicken cut off, or that didn't make sense, running around with my head cut off. But I made time for the things that had to be done, so then I had space for the things that I wanted to do. And this this week, I decided that I was going to start my very first sourdough starter. Now, I feel like when you get to be a certain age, you fall into a couple categories, right? Like running a marathon, starting sourdough, right? Like the things, having children, like there are categories that people fall in. And if they're not spending their time doing one of them, then like they're typing on to one of the other hobbies. For men, it could be like mowing the grass or golfing or grilling or smoking meat. Like we have all of these hobbies and things, right? And I think that's great. I love being put in a category, but this past week, I honestly, like, there's always been interest for sourdough, but I didn't think that I had the time or the energy to keep a starter. Now, the jury is still out if I'm going to be able to keep this starter alive for a prolonged period of time. But I felt like I had the space and I felt like I had the energy to try it. A quick little TikTok search and I was able to pull up a pretty easy recipe. I loved how simple it was. She had a 7-day starter. Today I'm on day 5, so I have 2 more days essentially. You start out with 25 grams of whole wheat, or no, it's 50 grams of whole wheat flour and 50 grams of water. You stir it and you let it sit on your counter. And I was like, that seems easy enough. These are, it is an ingredient that I can pick up at my local grocery store. I thought for some reason that you had to purchase starter. And that was kind of like the thing that wasn't getting me in the game, because I was like, oh, like I don't want to have to research which starter is the best. I don't want to have to wait for it to ship. Personally, I love instant gratification when I can get it. Because I prolong so much other gratification in my life, when I can have that instant success, that instant happiness, I'm going to go for it every time. So for the delivery of the starter, because I knew that I had to be in the right mind space, my kitchen had to be clean, and I had to make sure that I had the time to do it that week. I was like, oh, like, I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. But after, looking on TikTok, I was like, oh my gosh, like I just need flour from the store. Like I don't have to purchase someone else's starter. So I did that. I got out 50 grams of water, 50 grams of my flour, and I mixed it in a jar. And I was like, okay, perfect. That took me literally 2 minutes. It's on the counter. And I was like, this is going to be perfect. This is going to be grand. Day 2, it literally expanded to double its size, which was insane. Then you had to take some of the discard. Now, I hate wasting. I don't want to waste anything that is viable and usable. So I was like, all right, like I could toss this in the trash. And I had done some research and there was such conflicting views on whether or not you could use starter discard when you were first starting your starter, if that makes any sense. Because I am only on like day 2 or day 3, the start, or actually it was day 3 discard, because the second day you just add it again. You don't discard anything. So it was day 3. Essentially, it's 3 days old. That isn't like old. Like people have thousands of years starter, and the bacteria is not established. And so it's not like a very good yeast. And when you put it in a recipe, it might not do what you want it to do. Yeast is what makes the bread rise and have that fluffy airness to it. So I took a little bit of a risk, and had some bananas on the counter that were getting old, and I made banana bread. And listen, the reason I chose banana bread is because I have failed so many times at banana bread. It is not something that I have baked properly since I was 10 years old. I entered my first banana bread in a contest for 4-H. And it went horribly. One, I used a silicone pan, and then the other one, I used a regular pan, but I put them both in at the same time. The silicone pan was pressed up against the other pan, and on one side it was like super tall and on the other side it was not as tall, and I mixed all the ingredients wonky, and I didn't have an ingredients card, and I got a red ribbon at 4-H. And I remember the woman judging, she was like not having it. She's like, okay, like, where's your recipe card? I didn't realize I needed a recipe card. There's not exactly like super established rules sometimes for like 4-H. Like it literally had like a four sentences about like entering in the food contest. And it was like, it has to be clean, has to have, like be able to try it or anyways, she was like not having it. And I tried to explain, I was like, well, I can tell you what I did with the recipe. And like ever since then, I've just had such a bad issue with banana bread. So I figured if it was another loaf that I ruined, it was not a big deal. And I mixed up my sourdough discard. I put in my flour. I mashed up my bananas. And I was like, all right, let's do this. And it ended up super, super good. It's the best banana bread I've ever made, which is not saying a lot because I have had brick banana bread. I have had cake-like banana bread. Disgusting, just like gross. Okay, I've wrecked so many loaves. I figured, what's one more loaf, right? Like, what's one more loaf? And it ended up being so moist, so amazing. I know that my sourdough discard was not like a strong, pungent flavor, but I felt good about using it. And now we're on, like I said, day 5. So we have 2 more days until it's like an official starter. I've started adding bread flour to it instead of just the wheat flour. It is seriously so amazing how you can take something like flour and water from the grocery store. You can mix it up on your counter, and something inside just creates the bacteria to grow yeast. And it truly is like a little pet because you have to feed and water it every single day. I'm not sure what's going to happen when we go on our float trip this upcoming weekend, because I don't know if I should bring it with me or if I should keep it home, pop it in the fridge. I'm going to have to do more research on that. But so far I made 2 banana loaves now, and I also made pizza dough. My pizza dough was not as good, I will say, but it was edible. It was great. I got a little nervous while I was mixing the pizza dough. I like measured out and I only had about half. Well, I had 200 grams of my discard. And this is because I made 2, when I had 1 jar and I was about to discard some, I only used half of the discard, and then the other discard I like put in a jar and fed as well. So essentially I would have like 2 jars, because I knew that I wanted to like bake with it some the next day. And, I needed 100 grams for my banana bread, and I needed 200 grams for the pizza dough recipe. But I only ended up using 100 grams because I wanted to split it and make banana bread because we had eaten the other loaf. And as I was like mixing it, I threw in some like active dry yeast in there too. It's like just to help it along. And there was also like wheat flour. So the elasticity of that loaf or that pizza dough, it was looking very suspicious. It was not looking right. So I got nervous and I just made my regular pizza dough recipe as well. I was like, I've made pizza dough before. I'm just going to like whip this up as well. So I had one of my sourdough discard pizza dough, and then the other one was my regular one. We also had peppers going bad. My favorite thing about like cooking and being in the kitchen is using up ingredients and making sure nothing goes to waste. There are so many like different recipes that you can make, especially when it comes to fruit and vegetables that are starting to go a little soft. So with the peppers, I had green peppers, I had yellow, green, and red peppers. It came like in a 3-pack, and I had purchased 2 with the intention of making stuffed peppers. Well, guess what? I did not have time. Every single evening this past week was filled up. I subbed 2 yoga classes. I met up with a friend on Friday. Essentially, like I had Tuesday, but Garrett was gone all afternoon, didn't get home until super late. So there was no point in me like cooking for myself. And these peppers were going soft. And I hate when produce goes bad and you wasted your money, essentially. And peppers are expensive, okay? So I figured I would make a tomato sauce with the peppers. I did go and purchase pizza sauce as well after my yoga class, but I didn't want to use it if I didn't have to. I think having backups is great, but to experiment is always good. So I broiled the peppers, or I just put them on a pan with a lot of olive oil, popped them in the oven at 400 degrees. Let them do that for an hour or so. Let them cool a little bit, and I pop them in my blender. Now, always let your tomatoes and your peppers cool before putting them in plastic, because that's where it can melt the plastic, absorb the color, and wreck your Tupperware or your blender or whatever. It's always not like advised to put hot things in plastic. So with my blender, I waited for them to cool. Then I popped them in and I made this like beautiful pepper sauce. I will say that I didn't have a sifter. And I knew I had a sifter somewhere at my dad's house because I've made angel food cake when I lived with my dad. So I had to make a pit stop. I left it going on the stove, and I ran over to my dad's to pick up my like little duster, if you will, but it was perfect for collecting all of the pepper seeds. And I made a homemade pizza. And I will say, like, it was a pretty good trial run. It was a great opportunity to, 1, use my sourdough discard, 2, use up my peppers that were starting to go bad. And it was delicious. I opened up a bottle of wine from our Golden Gal Network retreat weekend. We had gone to Herman, Missouri, which has a bunch of little wineries, and Stonehill is one of those wineries. You might have heard of that. And I love their Herman Burger wine. It's a red wine, and they say it's perfect to go with pizza and hamburgers. So I was like, absolutely. I poured myself a little bit of wine. I rolled out my dough. It was honestly like the perfect night in. I was enjoying myself. My feet did hurt. I was literally in the kitchen from 2 until like 8:30 p.m. Making things from scratch is no joke. It literally takes forever. And whenever I think about like stay-at-home moms or wives, I always think, or the misconception is like, oh, they do nothing. They just like sit around and watch TV. But like keeping a house is so much work, like constantly cleaning, constantly folding laundry, doing dishes. If you're making anything from scratch, you have like tons of dishes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I literally spent 6 hours. That's almost a full work day in the kitchen, cooking and doing all the things. So it just amazes me how we can spend and enjoy life doing things that are productive. Like I accomplished something. I made pizza, and I don't know, like it still goes with my goals of like being happy, but essentially like it wasn't a metric, productive activity for like my career or my job or anything, right? Like that, but it definitely fed my mental health. And I mean, I cooked supper, right? So the sourdough has been definitely interesting. I have been enjoying it so far. We'll see if I kill it off, or if I'm able to keep it. And I'm anxious to start my first sourdough, actual like sourdough loaf. I have like a Dutch oven. I would say like the entry level things to buy to get started, it's like $10. I bought 2 bags of flour, and in total it was like $10. And then you get a clean jar, you get some water. So far so good. I'm really enjoying it. And that's my little hobby that I started this week. Let's get into my pit and my peak. So let's see. Let's start with the pit. My pit is like a little, it's honestly, it's kind of sad. It is sad. I was like hanging out, working throughout the day. And 2 days prior, I had gotten like a text from my dentist, and it was like, hey, it's been 6 months since your last checkup. Like, when can we get you in? I did not have my dentist saved to my phone. I just, I call him when I need it. And if I don't need it, I don't call, right? I'm on their automated system, and I was like, all right, this is fine. Like, we're going to move on. So I was just, hanging out, doing my work day, and I get a call, and it says like, well, on like calls, sometimes it'll say the town that the call is from. And so it said my hometown. It was like, oh, it's coming from Warrensburg. I said, perfect. I answered expecting it to be my dentist. And I was like, hey, hello. I was polite. It's an unknown number. It's not saved to my phone in that aspect, but I knew it was like the local area code. I was like, all right, like this will be fine. And the voice on the other end was like, hello, Logan. And I was like, yeah, like this is her, expecting it to be my dentist. However, it was like a very relaxed response. Like the other person was not necessarily like in a professional environment like a dentist office would be. And I get like lots of calls to my phone. So I'm always like I was like, yeah, this is Logan. And the other, like I said, like the other person on the line sounded so familiar. And the individual was like, hey, it's Travis. And I was like, oh, I was like trying to place Travis. And I thought maybe it was one of my previous loan customers. And they were like calling about their loan. I'm no longer in that industry, but a lot of my customers had my phone number. So then I was like, oh, maybe it's him. And he goes, hey, from the university. And I placed it. I was like, okay, this is the farm manager. I was an agriculture major in college. And I was like, oh, how's it going? He's like, well, the university posted that Logan Lee had passed away. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he said, so I thought to call you. And I was like, I guess if I didn't answer this unknown number or this call, he probably would have worried so much. So I'm glad that I answered. But this was just the first of many individuals reaching out. A young boy had passed away at UCM. He was a computer, oh my gosh, not engineer, a computer, people who fight against viruses. I cannot think of the actual word. But they had posted on Facebook and sent like an email out of one of the students passing away, and we share the same name. So, and Lee is my maiden name. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I got like a couple messages directly on like Facebook Messenger. I had like a person text me. Obviously, Travis called, and my mom sent it to me. She like screenshotted it, and she sent it, and she's like, oh my gosh, the way that like my stomach dropped. And it made me put it in perspective. I was like, oh my gosh, like this was a young kid, obviously, like he's at college, and it's so sad, right? Like when anybody passes away before their potential, before they're able to fully live their life, and even like when they have had like a happy, nice life, it's not fun to think about. And because we shared the same name, it was so bizarre, like looking at the announcement essentially and just thinking, every day is not promised, right? And so it was a bit of a pit, a bit of a reality check. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so sad. Like his life was cut short, and like I can't imagine. It was a good feeling. Like these people who love and care about me reached out. They're like, hey, like I saw this at first, and then I saw the gender, how they referred to this Logan as he, right? Like he did this. And then I realized it wasn't you, but it's still like, it did make me feel like good that people reached out and were worried. I think it's funny how Travis had seen the announcement and then immediately called. Like it just made me laugh. He's like, I'm gonna call her, see if she's all right, and I appreciate him checking in on me. But it was a bizarre thing. It was so bizarre. And, my condolences to that family. I definitely have thought about him for the last couple of days. But yeah, just to appreciate every single aspect of life. And you might be in a period of your life where you're not like totally jiving. I know that there's been like a period in my life where I just thought everything was going wrong, and it was one of those like rebuilding periods where well, it's before the rebuild, everything was just like destructing around me, and it was like blowing up in my face. This wasn't going right. That wasn't going right. I thought this was going to be my journey. I thought that was going to be my journey. And then like you're left with, racing thoughts and trying to get it all together, and not necessarily like having the capacity to, or not knowing your next direction. And, even moments like that, like I'm still so appreciative of those moments because I am alive, because I do get to experience the time and energy doing things. So that was my pit of the week. I'm sorry to bring it around something so sad, but it definitely like it stopped me in my tracks. I was like, oh my gosh, like it would be horrific. And I even talked about this last week about Ian, my cousin, passing. So death has just been kind of at the forefront. You could say it's like the Barbie movie where it's not like nobody likes to think about it, but when you like in the Barbie movie, she's like at a party and it like came to her mind, and it's nothing is wrong with you if you have that thought, or maybe someone has died, you've read an obituary or anything, but like it just puts it in perspective how fragile life can be, and how appreciative of every single moment, and just like relishing in the fact that you woke up today, you got to take a big deep breath of air, and your eyes opened, and you were able to get your favorite cup of coffee and maybe run late to work and get stuck in traffic. Like it's still a beautiful day of being alive. And I think sometimes we lose perspective on that because we think of our goals or our aspirations of like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I don't have enough time. And I constantly think that I'm running out of time, or running out. Last or Ask the Gals episode, the question was, what do you run out of constantly? And I said time. But then I think, like if I'm maximizing my time, if I'm actually using my time to do things that I love, and setting those boundaries, like I mentioned earlier, of, okay, like I need to make sure I'm taking care of myself. I need to make sure that I am fully present. And maybe I'm going to spend the afternoon in the kitchen messing with my sourdough, but I'm messing with my sourdough. Like that's what I'm choosing to do. It's bringing me joy. Or to, have the quadrants. So I am productive in those areas that need to be productive, and spending the time wisely. Not wisely. I hate when people say, oh, you better spend your time wisely. Like, just spending it in the way that makes most sense to you. And that doesn't mean that you can't scroll on your phone, or you can't literally look at the clouds and do nothing, or stay in the bathtub and let the water go cold and then fill back up, right? Like it's how you choose to spend your time, and maximizing it is going to look different for everyone. But as long as you're comfortable with the fact of like, this is how I chose to spend my time, I'm going to be happy with it, I'm going to have, the comfort of that, then that's perfectly fine. And that's your choice. Hey, I hope that you're enjoying today's podcast episode. Just a quick interruption to let you know that the Golden Hour Drip podcast has a monthly newsletter. You'll find podcast updates, upcoming events and information, and bonus content. If you haven't already, click the link in the show notes and join today. Now, back to the show. So usually I do the peak before the pit because I do like talking about the positive before the negative, but I did want to kind of talk about that first before getting into the rest of the episode. Let's talk about my peak of the week. My peak of the week is I recorded a vlog. I have not recorded, I've recorded a lot of vlogs. My last vlog posting was back in February. And what kind of got me off the track, I went to Florida to spend time with Andrew and Rachel, and I vlogged the whole trip. Well, I got super overwhelmed with the footage, and I was working full time still, or I was working during the trip is what I was meaning. And I was trying to get everything done, get it all together. And then I was coming back and I had things to do in February, and then March rolled around, and it was just one thing after another. And I quickly got so just out of practice, and I was like, oh, I'll do it next week. I need to edit. And then I recorded, I don't know, back in April or May. I tried twice. I recorded. Then I got busy halfway through the footage, and it just was so messy. If you've ever tried to record a vlog, you know how difficult it can be, and how talking to yourself is hard, right? Making conversation with yourself, or showcasing something, or having your camera battery charged, or uploading the footage and editing. It takes so much more time than you realize. And if you follow any vlogger on TikTok or YouTube, just know that they've spent so many hours editing and filming and putting it together. And so make sure you're giving some love. A like is literally just a double tap. A share is just a tap, sharing with a friend or sharing to your page, reposting. It seriously, social media is free, right? Social media is literally free, and people spend so many hours of their time, so many hours of their day, just creating something to bring joy or education to someone else's life. And it takes so much time, and it's frustrating. It's oh my gosh, I need to sit down and edit. And then is this the most productive thing that I could be doing? But it's a give and take, right? And you also need to have some sort of creative direction and the inspiration. And I just didn't. I didn't have it. Back in February, I had started yoga teacher training. So then March and April, the end of February, March and April, I was doing yoga teacher training. And then May, it was filled with things, right? I went to Austin, and it was my birthday, and I was doing meetups, and now it's March, or now it's June. And I'm okay, I feel I'm settled in my yoga teacher classes. I'm teaching twice a week. I'm feeling good about that. I'm feeling I have it under control. I feel I'm not needing to learn. Now I'm embellishing. It's just crazy, right? And there's going to be periods in your life where you're extra busy and you don't have time for things, and then you do have time for other things, and you're able to focus on those. And it just was hectic. And it's something that I do love doing. I love to vlog and I love to showcase what I'm doing or share education or some sort of comfort. And I was like, all right, like, let's do this. And so on Tuesday, I was like, we're going to vlog today. It was kind of like an impromptu thing. And it goes back to like, I had the space and the energy to do it. I wasn't overwhelmed. I wasn't trying to do too much. It was like the perfect amount of, hey, like we have time for this. Let's do it. And I recorded a whole couple days of my life. When this podcast episode comes out, it will not be released yet. I can't tell you the day I'm going to release it, but you can follow me at Logan Lee Miller on YouTube. And when I release it, I promise you it will be this week. It's a challenge for myself and I want to be creative in the editing process. I think what overwhelms me was I was trying to do 2 videos a week of a vlog, 2 videos a week of my podcast, and then keep up with everything else. And that's just not doable at this time, especially with my meetups for the Golden Gal Network. And it's like, I love doing all of these things. And if you are a Chapel Roan listener, she has this lyric and it's like, you realize you're just his wife. And this is something that like I've been very consistent with. And I feel like Garrett and I's relationship, even back in college when we first started dating, we complement each other so well. But we both allow each other to be individuals. So he has his hobbies. He has the things that he likes to do separate from me. And I have the things that I like to do separate from him. And then at the end of the day, we can come together and we can talk about those things. And I have been really, one, I was raised by such strong women and also 2 supportive dads who always told me that I could be whatever I wanted and that I don't have to just have children. I don't have to, just go to work. Like I can have hobbies. I can have aspirations. I can have as many children as I want, or I can have no children. I can start a company, start a business. They always were so supportive of me trying different things, and learning, I guess, what makes me happy and trying things that, I thought I would want to do and then ended up not liking anymore. So I've always had the support in doing what I want. And when I was looking for a partner, aka Garrett, he had the same traits. He had the, belief that I could do whatever I wanted, and he supports me in those aspects of like, yes, you can do this. Yes, you should have hobbies. If I go on a solo travel trip, like he is encouraging of that, because developing into your own person can be stunted when you get married or when you have children. And I don't have children at this point, but I do think, okay, like when I do have children, and I've been listening to Just Alex, her podcast, and she has Harrison, her baby daddy, or soon to be, I think they're engaged for sure, but they are going to get married shortly after having their first child together. But they were talking about how they want to their parenting styles and things, and how they moved to Austin, Texas, and they love it there, and there's a lot of young families. And Alex was saying, oh yeah, like we were at the pool and the kids are like playing in the water and the parent has like their computer open, they're working, but they also are spending like quality time with their children. And that hit me so hard because that's, again, what I aspire to do. My dad is a farmer. And so like I was able to go with him, whatever he was doing. I was always able to be with him if I wanted. In high school, actually like the end of my middle school, my mom and stepdad created their own business, and they essentially could have us kids with them 24/7. And I think that is such like an empowering thing to see, because instead of them giving up their careers essentially, and my mother was an amazing mother, and she raised 5 children all around the same age. She sacrificed so much for her children, and I know that that is something she always wanted to be. If you listen to any of our Mother's Days oh my gosh, our episodes together with my mom, she says that like she always knew she wanted to have children. And but she still has her own hobbies. She is amazing at gardening. She has like the greenest thumb. She loves having her plants. She's a great cook. Like she's always had 3 meals for us made and created. And like she has other hobbies too. She loves to sew. Like she taught me how to sew. She taught me how to crochet. She loves to scrapbook. Like she is such a multifaceted woman, and having that showcased to me, like I realize I can do anything I want as well. And I can like not just be a mom, right? Like I don't just have to be a mother. I can be a mother, and then I can also showcase like all the other hobbies and things. I was watching it's like an older movie. I while I was cooking, I love to have my iPad playing like a show. It doesn't matter really what it is. I want to have some interest, but it's like more background noise than anything. I like following along with the storyline. I like to think of it as like a soap opera, like as I'm like cleaning the house or anything, but usually it's movies. But it was The Guilt Trip, and it has Barbara Streisand and I'm trying to think of the actor's name, but a very common funny actor, Seth Cohen. No, Seth Cohen is from the OC. I think his name is Seth. I don't know. So sorry if I'm completely butchering his name, but it was about like the mom like constantly calling her son and like, what are you doing? What's this? And her husband had passed away, and she really like she had book club and she had her friends, but essentially like she was lacking maybe a purpose. And I think that's where like people feel like their parents are smothering them if their only objective is their child, whether their dreams and their passions have been like demolished or it didn't work out. And sometimes they like put all of that expectation into their child, like, oh, I wasn't an actress, but I want you to be an actress. And that's with like Janet McCarty, like her mother wanted to be an actress but wasn't ever an actress, so she threw her daughter into acting. She's like, you're gonna do this, you're gonna be amazing. And then that became unhealthy because the mom had like such a big expectation on her daughter. So for me, I'm like, okay, like how can I be the most individual? How can I, have my hobbies, have the things that I want to do, and still give space for the other things as well? And of course, like Chapel Roan is having her moment now. But when I think about that, that sentence, that comment of like, you're just his wife, I'm like, man, like my partner has given me space to be not only a wife, but also be so many other things. And then he's also not only a husband, but he has like other aspirations and things that he likes as well. So it fits out to be like a really nice situation. And I don't feel like, oh, I just have to cook and clean, but instead I can have hobbies of working on my computer and creating a vlog of like, oh, this is what I did, or these are the hobbies that I have. And I sometimes can get caught up in, oh my gosh, like, is vlogging taking away from like the other things that I could be doing? because essentially like I'm making them for myself. I'm making them for maybe my future children of, hey, like your mom didn't just like wait for you to be born. Like she had other things that she wanted to do, other aspirations and goals and hobbies. And that's not to say if you are wanting to be a stay-at-home mom and have children, I mean, essentially like I would love that as well. I would want to completely raise my children as like my parents did. And while I did have a babysitter at times or spent time with my grandma Colleen or anything like that, like I still was, embodied by my parents, and I loved that. I know we got on a little bit of a tangent, but definitely the peak was to create and have the space to record a vlog. And it seems silly, I know, but I love to create videos. So that was the peak. Again, I can't tell you when it's going to be uploaded, but I promise it'll be uploaded this week. So you can watch it then. You can always catch up on my old vlogs. It makes me excited too, because looking back at the vlogs from last year, I started vlogging back, it was like the end of May, because it was right before Andrew and Rachel's, or it was Rachel's bachelorette or bridal shower. And we went, and it was so much fun, but they just celebrated their 1-year anniversary. And I was talking to Adriana and Christian last weekend, and like their anniversary is going to be in September, and like my sister's anniversary is in August. And I just like, it's so fun to think, oh, like last year we were doing all of these things. And I can rewatch the vlog and be like, oh, that's what we did. It was so much fun. So that was my peak of the week. Speaking of like feelings and spending time and being separate away from your partner, this past week I went and saw Inside Out 2. Inside Out 2. Inside Out 1 made me sob. Okay. And I rewatched it because I think, as all good sequels go, you need to refresh your brain. You need to like get back into the mindset and remember all of the elements from the first, or the second, if it's the third movie, like the previous movie. So for Avatar, like we watched Avatar again, and then we went and saw Avatar 2. That way you are immersed in the series. That way you remember what's going on. So on Friday, I rewatched Inside Out 1. I was getting ready. I was going to the movies with one of my very good friends, Chelsea, and she is like my movie buddy. We are always going to see movies together. We went and saw the Barbie movie together. We went and saw Anyone But You together, and par the course, it's time to see Inside Out 2 together. So we booked our tickets. I was getting ready, and by that I mean like getting in proper clothes. I did put on a little bit of makeup to feel good. I hadn't like gotten ready all day, so I was like, all right, let's get ready, let's do the thing. And we went and saw Inside Out 2. Inside Out 1, here are my notes. For the first one, it feels like joy. And I know that's like the whole premise of the movie. If you haven't seen it, like, let me give you a little synopsis. Joy is the first emotion. When the baby is born, she is joyful, right? Like, and then soon after joy is sadness. Like the baby is, hungry. And so she's sad that she's not fed. So she's bawling. And it's like happiness, joy, happiness, sadness, joy, sadness, whatever. I use their names. And then there's like anger when she's a toddler, and all the like simple emotions: disgust, fear, joy, sadness, anger, right? Like those are the 5. Then there's like at the end of the movie, there's a button, it's puberty. And that like sends into the second movie. In the first movie, joy just like doesn't have space for sadness. It is only joy. We can only be happy. Here's your sadness circle. Don't feel sad. Never feel sad. We can always feel happy. We can always feel joyful. And it was so infuriating for me. I know it's a children's movie. I get that. But I think that there are such good elements in children's movies that can really be helpful and healing for adults as well. And I, for so long, have thought, oh, I need to be happy all the time. I need to like go along to get along. I need to be positive. I need to be smiling. I can't let anybody know that I'm irritated or I'm upset, because then I'm not like this happy person. And I've worked so hard on giving space for sadness and giving space for anger, even though I don't like experiencing those emotions as much, because if I'm happy, I can be productive and I can get my goals done. If I am sad, I'm not going to get my goals done. I'm not going to be my best self. But I've noticed that when I allow sad to come into my life, like, and experience that emotion, it doesn't kick me down in the future, right? If I am aware of sadness and I let it come, then I can not dismiss sadness, but I can let sadness go and get the joy much quicker than if I were to suppress sadness. That's when you have like this overwhelming sense of just a breakdown, essentially. And in the movie, like, Joy's like, no, sadness, you can't do this. No, sadness, you're going to wreck the core memories. No, sadness. And I I was obviously irritated. I was like, man, like, is this what it was? And I immediately thought of how like Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh he was depression, essentially. And then Pooh was gluttony, and Piglet was fear, and Tigger is happiness. Like, if you take Winnie the Pooh and those emotions, what is Rabbit? I don't know. Anger, probably. He's always angry. Kangaroo, love, like all those things, right? But for Eeyore, like, nobody tried to change Eeyore. They let him be in his little hut. They let him be sad. And if Eeyore is like, oh, bother, it's going to be a bad day, then like they sat with him and, in the silence. And with Inside Out 1, I was like, oh my gosh, like, why isn't Joy just like letting sadness be sadness? And it's because, one, if you take the character Riley, like, she is a child, she's an adolescent, like, she doesn't have the cognitive education, she doesn't, or cognitive awareness to realize that sadness is just as important as joy. And when I think back to like my younger self, I also thought the same. It was like, if I'm not happy, then that is bad. And at the end of the movie, she, lets sadness be sadness in the first one. The second movie, I will say, I did enjoy it. One, because it's fun. Like, I think children's movies are cute and endearing. And I'm about to start my period next week. So you know what? I'm a little bit emotional, a little bit sad, a little bit anxious, right? And anxious was like anxiety was the big emotion for puberty, right? So we had anxiety, we had envy, we had boredom, or ennui, boredom, and then we had embarrassment. So those were like the emotions that come with puberty. And to be honest, I am so blessed that I did not experience anxiety as a kid. I experienced anxiety in my 20s, and I am so grateful that it was delayed that long, because it is so that's not the right word, debilitating, where you feel like you cannot do anything. And I can't imagine, on top of all the other things going on, and I know a lot of people do experience anxiety when they're younger, but to experience that on top of your body changing, on top of, pimples and periods. And I just know it from the girl's perspective, starting to like boys, and like, how do you rank and your prettiness and all the things that come with being a human. But it was similar, right? Like, Joy didn't want anxiety to have the ropes because you want to be joyful all the time. And Joy thought she knew what to do. And not to spoil it, but there was a couple scenes where Joy did the wrong thing. Like she thought, oh, like let's do this. And the outside world didn't react properly to it. But when anxiety had her ideas and did it, then it was normal. And I think that Inside Out 2 was a very similar rubric to Inside Out 1. But it is still impactful. And I think that Joy, the character Joy, realized that it was important for the other emotions to have their time as well. Like anger, there was a moment where anger, was angry with her. And for Joy to cry in the movie or Joy to be angry in the movie, Joy, I know joy is an emotion and it's also fictional, but these things also happen in our brain. But the most sad and impactful line in the entire movie to me was when Joy said, when she's making these mistakes and anxiety seems to have all the answers, she's like, maybe getting older is about experiencing less joy. And that line made me so sad because adulthood does not have to be less joy. I think especially with summer, when we're a kid, summer is the best time because we don't have any responsibilities. We don't have school. We don't have a bedtime. We're not paying bills. And essentially we get to be outside playing all day long. We get to go to the pool and hang out with our friends. And that's very joyful. And then when we think about adulthood, we're like, oh, we don't have summers off. Oh, we have bills. We have expectations. Now we have to be anxious or we have to be angry or we have to be sad. And we don't experience the joy. And I think that while our summers are never going to be how they were as a kid, they can have so many aspects of how we were as a kid. So if you loved staying up super late as a kid during summertime because you didn't have school the next morning, maybe stay up on Saturday night and sleep in on Sunday, right? Clear your schedule so that you're able to have that. Or if you loved going out and getting ice cream, maybe on your lunch break, go stop at the ice cream shop down from your work and get some ice cream and feel that summer joy. There are so many ways to incorporate happiness during the summer. And I don't think that adulthood means less happiness because that's going to be a sad life. We only have school summers until we're 18. That's only 18 years. And let's say up until 5 or 6, that's not very, 6 is a great age, but that's when you're starting to realize things and have a conscience, right? But that would only be 10 years of summers being fun. No, you can have 70 more years or not 200 or 80 more years of fun summers. And it's all how you want to look at life and which emotion you want driving your control panel. It's also interesting, Riley's control panel is controlled by joy. If you look at the mother, hers is controlled by sadness. And if you look at the dad, it's controlled by anger. And I would rather have joy run my control panel. I would rather allow space for all the emotions to come to the control panel. There's going to be times when anxiety is running the show or when it's anger or disgust or envy running the show. But ultimately, joy is going to get back into her, into the panel. I encourage anybody to go see this movie. It was such a fun take on how emotions can impact your life. And I loved it. I will say it was very similar to Inside Out 1. And if you haven't seen Inside Out 1, go see the first one as well. Get into the mindset, get into the brain space. And also there's the deep, dark secret. So Chelsea and I stayed until the very end of the entire movie. You have to wait until all the credits roll, like every single credit to the very end. It was just Chelsea and I sitting in the movie theater. Everybody else cleared out. I think there's one or two other people who waited, but at the very end, it's like, okay, deep dark secret, you can come out now. And they shared the deep dark secret, and it was funny. It was very cute. But yeah, we stayed until the very end to watch it, and I wouldn't have known that unless it was for social media to show me, hey, like there's this end part. So thank you for everyone who snuck their phone into the movie theater to show that. But just like we waited for the very end of the movie, you waited to the very end of this podcast episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, which I'm sure you did because you're still here, please give it a like, subscribe, share it to a friend. Sharing is caring, and it's the best way to move the podcast message. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being a great golden hour dripper, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.